Welcome to the Cashflow Project podcast. Are you looking to better your financial situation by increasing your cash flow? Too busy to hunt for real estate deals or don't know where to start? Then you're in the right spot. Join us as we dive in and talk about investing for cash flow using multifamily real estate.
Welcome to the Cashflow Project podcast. I'm your host, Steve Fierros with Tri-City Equity Group. Today, we've got Kelly Koontz on the show. Kelly's a president for Sub-Meter Solutions. They're based out of Kent, Washington. And since 1999, so well over 2 decades, Sub-Meter Solutions has been selling, servicing, and installing electric, gas, and water utility meters and sub-meter services locally and nationally. They also provide third-party billing services for multi-unit properties and help unlock property ROI and streamline utility costs in multifamily housing. Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here to speak with you today.
No, I really appreciate you jumping on today. And I think that there's no better time to help our listeners kind of help to try and, all right, well, what can we do to help streamline your operations for one, but then also two, in this current environment of increased interest rates and rising operational costs, whether that be insurance or property taxes, like us as investors, we really need to find every which way to try and drive revenue. And maybe we can unlock some secrets here in terms of maybe some options that people haven't previously considered. So I'm excited to have you on the show. And for our listeners, don't adjust your dial. You're not having a communication problem or connection issue. That is my voice today. So I'm super thankful that the rough voice is clearing up after a few days, but we'll power through it. And we wanted to make sure we brought Kelly on, make sure we're providing you the most amount of value. So appreciate you guys tuning in and putting up with my voice today. So thank you, Kelly, for hopping on. And we appreciate you coming on today.
We'll take good care of your voice here, Steve. I'll see if I can lead the way.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Well, hey, you know what? For those of our listeners that may not be familiar with you, they're not up in the Pacific Northwest, and maybe just aren't familiar with your business model and kind of what you guys have to offer. Give us a little bit of your backstory. How did you get started in the business? Did you come from a long line of like utility service, ancillary products and services, or like what's the? Give us some of your story.
Well, thanks for asking. It's actually, I smile as I tell you my story. As you mentioned, our office is just outside of Seattle. So we're in the rainy today Pacific Northwest in the shadow of Boeing. And I actually spent 25 years of my career working in aerospace manufacturing. And that took me both locally, did some work over in China for a bit. And I had an occasion to connect up with one of my very dearest old friends from junior high and high school that we've kept in touch on, who is the founder of Sub-Meter Solutions. And when I say that, you mentioned clear back in 1999, he started this business literally as an online place to order gas and water meters. There was no place to do that. This is the .com era. And he had the foresight to say, hey, I can do that. Let's give it an opportunity for somebody who may not otherwise know how to go through that kind of tangled web of getting to that kind of a product. And that's how our business started. And he just did that as an after work weekend project for a few years, but it was growing and went full time. And then I joined him in 2010. And at that time, we doubled the size of the company, him and me. Ever since then, we've been growing steadily, and we now sell water, gas, and electric meters and meter reading systems throughout the country, as well as we provide those ongoing monthly utility billing services to our clients as well. So that's a little bit of the backstory for me. I'm kind of an old fart. I've got 3 adult daughters and sons-in-laws and 5 granddaughters now that increasingly are a big priority in my life.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I know all of that changes things. I've got 2 young daughters and they absolutely keep us busy.
Okay.
So, well, yeah. Okay. So your experience there with bowling, that obviously took you all over the place. So that's great. So you get a chance to kind of see, I always think that this provides such a unique vantage point, like a unique perspective, especially when you travel internationally in terms of like, hey, how do things run? How do things operate, right? Anybody who's ever been for here in Hawaii, a popular visiting place is Tokyo, is Japan. And it's like, oh my goodness, you see the technological marvel that it is and how incredibly efficient operations are, let's say for a city, and especially one like, let's say as massive as say Tokyo. It's like, wow, like things don't have to always operate the same way, right? The same way that I'm used to And so like, I'm sure that provided you a kind of a unique perspective that you could bring into the business to say, well, hey, we're Washington State doesn't do it that way. And they must be wrong. Or, I'm sure that helped to bring a fresh perspective in terms of, well, hey, maybe we can do it differently. I saw this here and I saw this there. So that's great.
Absolutely, Steve. We could spend a whole other podcast just discussing international relationships, how business is done in Asia, in Europe, and how it's different versus in Americans. We always think our way is the right way and the best way, and that's just not true. There are a lot of things to learn from other parts of the country, both in just how business is done, but also in just many ways about relationships. So I've been really blessed to have a lot of different opportunities to experience that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, you mentioned a couple of different ways that you guys provide services, let's say, to clients. Let's dive a little bit into that there. Like I mentioned kind of in the intro, it's OpEx has gotten increasingly difficult the last couple of years now. We're in this kind of high interest rate environment, which we hadn't seen that. And most people, a lot of investors that have just only been in kind of for this recent cycle, have never experienced interest rates above 5-6%. So obviously we're battling that on the debt side. But then too, recently, post-COVID, obviously we're dealing with increased really utilities, insurance costs, property taxes, like everybody loved all of the rising valuations. But hey, guess what? That also factors into your property taxes and all that. As county says, hey, your property's worth more. I'd like kind of that piece.
Right.
How are you helping investors, let's say, with RUBS or the services that you guys offer to help the investors kind of drive some of that ROI and really ultimately to the bottom line?
Well, Steve, you really set that up well, talking about those operational expenses that any multifamily owner or manager is facing when they're looking at their P&L. They're seeing that if it's not taxes, maybe insurance, but one of their most expensive line items on there is traditionally utility costs, where the utility is simply billing the entire property. They've got one water meter, for instance, out in front of the building, and they're sending that bill to the property itself. And it's up to the owners or managers to figure out how they're going to recover those costs from residents. And we really like to think that there's basically 3 different ways that they can try to recover those costs. Certainly the tried and true first method is, well, let's just get it as part of our monthly rents. Let's add $50 or $100 or whatever to the rent and hope that covers costs, hope that nothing spikes during the month that surprises them. And we would want to start by saying that first option is just rife with some real problems. Your residents are at best very disconnected from that cost being associated with their rent. And more traditionally, what's running through their mind is, oh, water is free. I don't have to manage or worry about that. I can use as much or as little as I want. It doesn't impact me. And from their perspective, that's absolutely true. So you mentioned RUBS. RUBS is that fun acronym in our industry that talks about a ratio utility billing system, where we can take that utility bill and we can split it up with some method. Maybe it's by occupancy or square footage or number of bathrooms. And that is certainly better than that first option I gave, because now you are beginning to connect those costs, those true costs, and the residents see them and they're paying accordingly. And that offers some real advantages to the property owners and managers. Now they are recovering those full costs on a regular basis to pay that utility bill. So that is income directly attributable to that. And we're big proponents of RUBS. If you're stuck in method 1, definitely for sure start doing RUBS, and we can help with that. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. I also, though, want to talk about the third option, which is submetering. And what that's all about is that in addition to just figuring out how to split the bill to the residents, we're actually going to install a utility meter. Maybe that's a water meter or an electric or a gas meter in each individual unit. And now what happens is you're splitting that bill up and charging each resident exactly for what they're actually using with that utility. So the advantages of that, Steve, are that residents now are fully connected by their actions with what they paid. You're empowering them the very best. Even Rubs is a big disconnect on what their bill comes every month versus their habits with how to use those utilities. So by adding meters, that's really truly the way that the resident gets to control that cost the best. And from the standpoint of the owner or the managers, they're also now recovering those costs very effectively. They get all the advantage that they may have been getting with Rubs, but they're also getting some other advantages like the technology allows for instance, alerts if you have a toilet that's got a flapper up and it's leaking and running water, and the management can get an email or a text within 24 hours that alerts them that they need to go investigate that. So that's why we think sub-metering makes a ton of sense beyond Rubs. Of course, probably your listeners are thinking, well, that sounds expensive. Meters for every unit. How the heck am I going to justify that? And we'd like to say that usually, depending on your strategy and the specifics, we may be able to offer you a return on investment that's less than 12 months on recovering those costs, depending on your circumstances. We can help you calculate that. Yeah, so that's kind of the three methods that are available, Steve, to all of your listeners, and what we can do to help with that. And I'd be happy to tell you more about kind of how sub-metering works and about our billing services.
Yeah, for sure. I got a couple of questions there just over what you covered there. So kind of the first thing coming to mind, does this only make sense for larger, let's say, operators? Like typically our buy box, 50 units, the absolute minimum, to upwards of 100, 150 units. But obviously we got a lot of listeners that, hey, well, I've got a triplex, or I've got a smaller multi, a fourplex or something. Like, that sounds like it would be cost prohibitive for me, just like how your point is, especially with, like, let's say, sub-metering. Who is this a good fit for?
So glad you brought that up, Steve, because traditionally our industry has really considered that this is a 50 or 100 unit and above kind of option. And one of our missions has been the last 10, 15 years is to really open up opportunities for small property owners to get all those advantages of sub-metering or for Rubs billing, even if they do have that triplex that you mentioned. So the equipment is situated and designed now. It's priced such that we regularly sell literally dozens and dozens of systems every month to properties that are less than 20 units. We think that makes a ton of sense for folks that have smaller properties.
Okay, awesome. And then is this a service or something that you guys offer nationwide? Is this only locally there in Pacific Northwest, or who's the ideal customer here?
Yeah, we are selling and working with our clients to help get installed that equipment throughout the United States, into Canada. We regularly have service people that, if needed, will go on site to help. But frankly, our equipment now is so mature that typically what we can do is configure, label, train over video calls so that we can ship it to you and then work with you to make sure that it gets all installed properly with your local plumber or electrician. We don't walk away from you. We want to make sure that you don't buy equipment from us, a system from us, and that it never gets installed properly. So we're going to be through that process to make sure that it's all fully commissioned.
Awesome. And then I'm genuinely curious, let's say, about what you mentioned about, let's say, for a water meter, like helping you to key you in on potential issues, leaks. Again, like I deal with insurance frequently. I run an inspection business here in Honolulu, and it's something that we see all the time. And so, like, immediately my mind goes to, wow, like they sell leak detectors and whatnot, like for plumbing fixtures and whatnot, but if you can also get ahead of, let's say, waste, because again, a small leak over a prolonged period of time can cause significant amounts of damage. And if any property owner can attest to that, like, hey, and residents are the worst at reporting damage because they think, well, hey, if I call my landlord and tell them there's a problem, guess what? That's going to equate to a monthly rent increase prematurely. Never mind the fact that you got a 12-month lease or whatever. They think, well, if I call you for anything, you're going to raise my rent. And so they just don't end up reporting things. And so it's like, wow, my mind immediately goes to, wow, what a great way to be able to key me into, hey, your meter's like up 15% over the last, your normal usage. I think we've got something going on in there. Let's get our maintenance team in there, our maintenance guy, to go in and take a look, see what's happening. to determine if there's some kind of leak. So that as soon as you said that, my mind was immediately like, oh, okay, that's a great monitoring tool for sure.
Yep. We think that's one of the most exciting technology advances in our industry is everything to do with leak alert, leak detection. We kind of break that into two categories, Steve. There's the leaks like that. I mentioned toilet flapper leak. And boy, you're so right that what you may think is so small, a very typical toilet flapper that's running will use 6,000 gallons of water in a month, which can be between $170 even $200 a month in water and sewer fees that add up. So this is an economic impact right away. But the equipment that we have now has got algorithms built into the data collection system, which looks at and identifies when water has constantly been running, say for 24 hours. And then it will issue automatically a text or an email alert to the property owner or manager that says, hey, you need to go check out 112. Water's been running. And now instead of maybe finding out that resident hasn't been dealing with that toilet flapper 45, 60 days from now, you're going to get it next day. Everybody wins. The resident wins, the management wins, our society wins as we save that water. The other kind of leak that's really is what you mentioned, that damaging kind of leak where water's running under the sink or what have you. And what's been exciting for us to see is our metering systems now can be accompanied with those types of leak alert systems as well. You can install a probe under the vanity, say in a bathroom. We see a lot of low income clients of ours really picking up on this, and it's relatively inexpensive. It communicates on the same technology backbone that the meters communicate on. Data is going up to the cloud, and we're actually have systems that monitor that. And insurance premiums are vastly lowered if you can show them that you've got an up-to-date leak detection system that offers 24-hour monitoring. And so talk to us. If you have that situation, we'd love to help you with that.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, Kelly is on that, like, no doubt. Ask your carrier, like, hey, do you guys provide a discount for active leak detection? Like almost guaranteed, like they will do it. And how robust that is, like your system, it usually doesn't need to be that complicated. But of course, if you're getting multiple wins, let's say on the income side, because you can provide the sub-metering and you can get more accurate reading, plus you get the benefit of having, let's say, that leak detection and whatnot. I mean, it's a win-win because now, hey, my numbers are more accurate on the utilities, let's say on the individual billing. Plus two, I also get the savings of minimizing any kind of damage or loss or any of that kind of stuff. Because I can tell you guys, if they just have a single meter and you're on, let's say, a 50 unit complex or a 20 unit, it kind of doesn't matter. And you have like that, let's say you got 2 running toilets and you got a 20 unit property. There is zero way that they're going to be able to, like traditionally, zero way they're going to be able to isolate, hey, it's unit 202 and unit 208, they both have running toilets that, to Kelly's point, that have been running and wasting thousands and thousands and thousands of gallons of water over the course of a year. Guess what, guys? They bill you for that. And like, it's impossible to isolate that, right? Unless you're physically going in there and checking, or you have a second set of eyes through, let's say, one of the solutions there that Kelly and his team offer, you just won't know. So that's a powerful tool. And then especially with the insurance costs, oh my goodness, insurance is just killer right now in so many markets. I know a lot of our listeners, hey, if you're in Florida, if you're in Texas, if you're in any of these areas that are prone, I mean, we're seeing it here in Hawaii now. They had the Lahaina fires. Okay, well, guess what? That spiked premiums, or you had carriers dropping out of the market to be able to provide coverage. Hey, Mr. Insurance Carrier, I can provide something showing you, hey, we've got one extra level of protection here, protecting against potential loss and damage. Oh, okay, well, maybe we'll reconsider. Yet again, no guarantees there, but you want to be able to have every tool possible to be able to take to those guys and show them, hey, I'm proactive in what we're doing to protect our property and reduce your liability, right? So yeah, no, I love that.
Yep. Your listeners may be asking, well, how does all this work? So let me share with you, and they may also be adding to that, boy, this sounds expensive to talk about meters and leak detections. And I guess I would start by right there and say, yes, this all begins with a quality, utility grade accurate water meter that actually has some wireless technology. So that data is being sent eventually up to the cloud. on a regular basis each day. But a meter for a typical apartment that's installed inside the apartment unit is usually less than about $120 per unit. So that's literally the hardware cost per unit. There's some infrastructure at the building level to serve that, collect those reads from each meter and push that up to the internet. But all those things are very straightforward, it's very mature, proven technology. The reading systems are based on battery powered transceivers, with those batteries lasting 10 years. So it's not like you're changing batteries a lot. You don't have to worry about wiring any of this if you're talking about a water meter or a gas meter. So we would work with you and your maintenance team or your local plumbers or electricians to find the right installer, make sure that everything gets done properly that way. So I really want to encourage your listeners that don't think that this is a huge expense. We can give you those specifics and then help you identify what that return on investment is. And then part two, Steve, is once that equipment's in place, we also then can provide you that ongoing monthly utility billing where there's a bill sent directly to every one of your residents. And that can be done whether we're sub-metering the property or if you're using a RUBS methodology, that same bill can be sent. And how that works, we read the meters if that's appropriate. We enter the actual costs from your utility based on your utility bill or published rates. So we're super careful to make sure that, number one, you're not under billing and you're getting all that you can recover. And number two, that you're not over billing, because that can be equally or maybe more devastating. That one of the important tenets in our industry is you can only bill your costs. This is not a profit center. So we're really careful to make sure you're collecting that exact cost that the utility is charging the property. We send that bill to each resident, mail or email. The resident then, based on how the property sets it up, can pay directly to the property, or they can pay us, and we can reimburse that on a monthly basis to the billing client. Now that may also sound like, well, how much do I got to pay for this service? That sounds complicated. Mailings, emails, reports, all of that. Well, the fun part about that is we put a small billing fee on each utility bill to the resident. So our costs to do that billing is covered by the residents' fees. And we're also super careful to make sure those are all with local laws and codes. We keep you out of trouble with all of that as well. So you could argue that billing service is essentially free to the owner or manager, and we'll take care of that ongoing process each month for you.
No, that's great. Yeah. I mean, and for anybody who's managing or you own property, I mean, like every one of these little things is something you have to track. So to have like a separate Kelly and his team to be able to provide that service, like, hey, that's just one less thing that you have to deal with if that's not your strong suit, or if that's a hole in your team, or really you just want to offload that. Like have somebody that's do it, that's all they do. And they're experts at it. They know their equipment. They know how to handle kind of all the billing side and guest or the resident interaction. So you don't have to deal with that. So like, that's a powerful tool. Add to your team. Like that's something we talk about frequently. It's like, hey, the more tools I have, the more teammates I have, the more solutions, the more problems we can solve. And so if that frees up bandwidth for you guys to go out and to add more value in some other capacity, do it, right? Like do it. So yeah, no, I love that.
And if your listeners have questions about, well, will that data integrate into my property management software platform? Those are the kind of questions we love to answer. Yes, it will. We'll make sure that we are coordinating with your system to minimize your administrative time as well each month.
That's definitely a great question. There's a ton of different management software platforms out there. And that would be something hey, I don't want to have to add, man, I spent how much of our team time just getting used to our software platform here, only to have to go learn something completely new and to try to incorporate that. It's like, hey, I thought I was trying to save time here. What's good? So that's great. Very good. Well, this is the point in our show where we transition to something we call our fire round, just a little bit more brief Q&A, something a little bit more fun, although potentially profound. Is that something you're up for?
You betcha. Bring it on, Steve.
Awesome. All right. First question. Kelly, what's the best book that you recommend other than for us real estate junkies? That's Rich Dad Poor Dad, or it's the Purple Bible. But do you have a favorite book that you recommend out to people?
I'll actually offer a couple out this last year. A book that some of your listeners may have read, but it's certainly been helpful for me, is James Clear's book on atomic habits and
Yep.
learning how to change your life 1% increments at a time, and to really appreciate we all have habits, good and bad, and how do we emphasize those good ones and how do we manage those bad ones. And that's a great read. I would encourage your listeners, if they haven't already, to pick up Atomic Habits. The other book, I guess I'll just throw out, it's newly released and I'm just about finished with it, but I'm a big history buff. And there's a new book out from Eric Larson. That's an author that maybe some of your listeners are aware of. And he's got a book called The Demon of Unrest. And it's all about the buildup and then what happened with the battle at Fort Sumter in Charleston just before the Civil War. It's been super insightful to get in the minds of the folks at the time, both in the South and the North, and Lincoln and Beauregard and Jefferson Davis. And I would encourage you to read that. It's a great read.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I love that. And I think too many times now, especially in our modern culture, our modern age, we're too dismissive of, let's say, the leaders of the past. And it's like, well, hey, they didn't have AI back then. Like, what do I need to learn from these guys? It's like, guys, human nature does not change. The same stuff that they were dealing with back then is the same junk that you're dealing with in just some slightly different variation. It might be wearing some different clothes and be called something else, but when you're dealing with people, guess what? And you're dealing with the same stuff over and over and over and over. So you can absolutely learn stuff from our forefathers here, the people that started our great nation. So yeah, no, awesome book recommendation. I love that. Great. All right, next question. What would you consider your superpower to be, other than sub-metering?
I'm a huge Patrick Lencioni fan. Some of your listeners may know him. He's got some new tools out that kind of identify what your things that you're very good at and things that you're not so good at. For me, one of them is galvanizing. I'm very good with our team to see a goal out there and to inspire them and to encourage them and to empower them to get to that goal. And I tend to be emotional, good or bad. Energetic is probably a good word that describes me. And I think that that's probably one of my best superpowers.
Yeah, it's definitely a superpower. We want that energy, be infectious. Like, we need people on the team who are, hey, I like being around that guy. Like, he's a good guy. Like, yeah, awesome. Very cool. All right, next question. What is the biggest lesson that you've learned over your career thus far?
Oh, I think that it's one that others will say too, but it's so profoundly true for me. Surround yourself with people that are smarter than you are, and learn how to listen more than you speak. And that's going to really serve you well. I try my very best to think about that and embody that every single day that I'm here at our company. We've got some great people that I get to work with on a daily basis, and they know so much better than I do how to solve problems that they're living and dealing with on a daily basis. And I just want to make sure I'm giving them the tools and the resources to go do that. That's what I've learned.
Wow. No, that's great. And even you mentioned being like listening. I struggle with that. We do a ton of networking. I know you do too. I know you guys go to conferences, or you got something coming up too. But that's always one of those things, even if you just keep it in the back of your mind, let's say, listen more, it's always on the back of my mind. And especially if I'm having a conversation, oh, am I talking too much? Right. And then just to stop, listen. Okay. Just to keep it there. Right. And so, yeah, no, that's really good. All right. The next question. What is sorry. No. For the busy working professional, somebody who's trying to work toward a financial freedom, what advice would you have for them?
I guess I would say,
Besides get sub-metering.
yeah,
Because that will help you.
of course, that's the first thing to do but don't just work in the system, but get outside of that and make your systems and your processes better. Look at big picture. Big picture is where you're going to make an impact, whether it's your personal finances, your family, whether it's a business you have, but that's really where a change happens, is not seeing the forest to the trees.
Yeah, no, 100%. And just like you mentioned, let's say with your book recommendation, hey, we want to be able to take a step back. Like you want to be able to learn from these giants of the past. Okay, but how we have the benefit of being able to look back, let's say on Thomas Jefferson's life as a whole. Okay, well, how can I do the kind of the same thing in my life, right? Take a step back, look at the big picture, look at my life as a whole, and see, all right, well, how can we make some improvements here, right? And that's going to change not only your life, but all of those around you, your coworkers, your teammates, or your family. Yeah. So no, awesome advice there.
Yeah, well,
And then for those of our listeners that maybe want to reach out, they want to talk some strategy. Hey, how can we implement this in our properties? Or if they just want to talk to you maybe about the technology, or what's the best way for them to reach out and connect with you guys?
so Submeter Solutions, our website is submetersolutions with an S at the end.com. We've actually got a special page set up at submetersolutions.com/podcasts that your listeners can go to. They can, they'll see a brief little form they can fill out, which gets us your contact information, a little bit maybe about your specific property. And then we'll have one of our folks reach out to you with a phone call or an email. And then we're happy to put together, if you'd like, a proposal or an estimate on your specifics. We're going to make sure that, we listen to what your individual issues are with your property and give you a tailored proposal on how best we think that can work, whether that's submetering, or we'll also talk about billing services. Maybe it's just RUBS that you want to talk to us about. We can walk you through all of those details. And yeah, and two, if you'd like to see us in person, I know that our staff is going to be at the National Apartment Association, the NAA's show, the Apartmentalize in Philadelphia. And I believe that's June 20th, 21st. And we'll be manning a industry booth. Contact us if you're going to be there. We'd love to say hello and get a coffee together with you if people are in the area.
Awesome. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for hopping on the show today and kind of sharing your wisdom, your insight, and giving us a little bit of kind of pulling back the curtain and seeing how we can help to drive some of those returns and maybe consider some solutions we hadn't previously considered, solving some problems before they become those. So I really appreciate you coming on and enjoyed our conversation today. So we'll have to circle back with you again, guys. Reach out to them, to Kelly and the team, Submeter Solutions. If you guys are going to be at the conference, make sure that you stop by their booth and say hi and reach out and connect to them. All right, Kelly. Well, I appreciate you coming on today, and we'll talk to you soon. All right.
It's a pleasure to speak with you today, Steve. Thank you.
Thanks for taking your time. Aloha.
Aloha.
Great conversation with Kelly Koontz over at Submeter Solutions. That's an innovative way we do to be able to help drive NOI and help just really overall operations with their submetering of water, basically utilities, water, gas, electric. That can be a big deal, guys. So if that's not something you're dealing with currently, that's something you should look into. For one, just from a revenue standpoint, like we've used RUBS quite effectively and to great effect for most of all of our properties from since we started when we started operating. But there may be obviously times where the submetering is going to work, so much more effectively. So if that's something you can underwrite for or potentially want to look more into, make sure you're reaching out to Kelly and the team to see if it's going to be a good fit for you. But guys, too, if you're interested in connecting with us locally here, of course, make sure that you guys are finding out our meetup, Multifamily and More, Honolulu Multifamily and More. We meet every month. So we'd love to meet you in person. The next meetup's coming up soon. So definitely make sure that you're finding us on Facebook or meetup.com, Bigger Pockets. We usually post on all of those platforms. Guys, if you find value in the podcast and the show, we'd love for you to share the episode, share the show, leave us a 5-star review, wherever it is that you're listening to us. We really appreciate the feedback and the support. If you're enjoying the show, it's a one way we can continue to bring on great guests to help provide value for you guys. But we could definitely use the encouragement. So appreciate that for you guys. And then, of course, we've got our conference. It's coming up fast, guys. There's still time to buy your tickets. July 10th through the 13th, the Hawaii Millionaire Mindset Conference. You will not find a better conference on the island. It's going to be the top business owners, entrepreneurs, real estate investors. Such a great way to come out and learn from other people who are just a few steps down the road or maybe much further down the road and just be able to pick up some new tools, some new contacts. We'll definitely make plans to be there. All right, guys. So that's going to be it for today. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in the next episode. God, take some action, and we'll see you soon. Aloha.